Welcome to a muzzled chat. We got a very special guest today, near and dear to my heart. We welcome Scott.
Hi.
Scott actually has been invaluable on all sorts of things, testing this imagery, camera, because you can't tell, but as we look into this camera right now, let's go Brandon, every word
On his Kerry Lake shirt.
was showing up reversed. So it's reversed. I can't technically read it. I can read it backwards. But come to find out, it's we found the right setting that after we're done recording, you view it and it reads correct.
Yeah, it's a mirror image. I guess what it does. But it's not while you're watching the video. It's after.
It's after.
Yeah, it's not live. It's afterwards. It's
So,
weird.
We're sitting here scratching our heads for a while on that. Just to fill you in. I mean, this is as raw and transparent as things can get. But anyway, it's fun to have you here. In fact, you're the
Thanks.
first official guest.
Fantastic. We get to test this out.
To be determined whether or not this is, in fact, something we feel good about uploading. To be determined.
Yeah. Got to test it out somehow.
But, I'm open to the thought regarding, to get input, right? But got to break in the ice. I can tell with me personally, this is a challenge. My gears are rusty, and there's a level to this microphone, a recording device that's intimidating, I'll say. How are you feeling?
I agree. I'm not used to something in my face besides a spoon or a fork to eat my food.
Very nice.
Better get used to that sound.
I didn't even know which button to push. I just got lucky. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely.
Anywho, so what would you like to chat about today?
Oh, this is your information. This is your video.
Okay.
What do you have in mind?
Well, we could talk on all sorts of things. There's a topic I'd love to get into, and I think you have some thoughts. Of course you have some thoughts. What am I saying?
Sometimes I do.
Whether they're
Beneficial or not, that's a different story.
Yes. So what surprised me is I've gone around, talked to people about, hey, your story, and is this, would you potentially like to talk about your story on a podcast and this and that? And to my surprise, people are aware of podcasts.
Yes, they are.
But a lot of people don't even have a podcast player app on their phone. They're literally asking me in the moment of this very conversation, oh, how would I go about finding the podcast and this and that? I'm like, what? So it's been blowing my mind in this information age we live in. Where are people getting their information? Like the mass majority of all you guys, like, where are you getting your information? Like, because I view mainstream media as a war machine, and a bad one, where, I mean, you can connect some dots. You could look into the funding, follow the money behind a lot of these big organized CNN style world renowned, platforms. And it becomes clear. No wonder they're pro vaccinations and this and that due to the funding. Like over 70%, last I looked into it, of their funding was actually coming from what are some of those pharmaceuticals, like Pfizer. Yep. So it's just like, the war machine, this mainstream media, has been lying to us. They don't care about us. It was clear through this last pandemic, where they wanted you to wear a face diaper. They were pushing face diapers on your face and all these things under the guise of looking after us, caring about us. But if they genuinely cared about us, I personally feel that they would have talked about exercise, watching what you eat, supplementation, vitamins. They would have said, hey, it's probably a good idea with this scary death variant going around, whatever propaganda they talked about, to say, hey, maybe sit down the cigarettes, maybe stop poisoning yourself with alcohol. That, like, things along those lines actually have been, scientifically proven to boost immune systems. And so if they genuinely cared. So anyway, I guess I'm going off a tangent here, but it's just touching on one aspect to their platforms of, to me, it just highlights it, that they're experts in one thing, and that's gaslighting us. They truly don't care. So,
Well, I don't know if I would say they don't care. It's that they do care, but it's not for us. They care with their agenda.
true.
And they're, I don't know how to phrase it properly, but I think they try to prevent these podcasts from happening. A lot of them.
Mm.
They like their YouTube, they like their Facebook reels, they like their TikTok reels, but other than mainstream podcasts, I don't think they really like those. And they try to censor them consistently.
Right. Well, for good reason, because it's essentially taking away their funding source, their viewership, their clicks, their likes.
Well, I don't want to say it's that exactly. It's more so their power. It's taking away their power. It's taking away their propaganda.
Good point.
Because if you're able to control the masses with your media, with your propaganda, you have all power over them.
Right.
Okay, maybe not all power, but majority of power.
Well, that's no secret. They've done military-style experiments for a long time now on humans and humanity in smaller communities, where you control the information, you do effectively can control the masses. I mean, one of the examples, I suppose, would even be Nazi Germany. How they controlled the information, the narratives of book burnings, took down crosses in churches, put up, pictures of Hitler, changing the songs to where they're essentially praising him as their savior and Lord, and what have you. And it just goes to show as to how you can create such an evil narrative like movement. So I don't feel personally we could drive this nail home in even a single sit down conversation. It's just worth really diving into, because we all could pretty much agree that we live in an information age, yet we're not necessarily grasping the level of importance of sourcing information, and how important and how effective that has been to polarize all these topics, create confusion. That's why I view that war machine as just a like experts solely in gaslighting, and it's pretty much the wolf in sheep's clothing, I feel, where they've been so effective because they prey on your heartstrings. Oh, don't you care about grandma and your neighbor? And so
Emotions.
yes,
They go on your emotions.
right. And wow, it's just kind of mind-blowing where I run into these individuals talking podcasts, and they're asking me for sources. How do I listen and this and that? And it's just like, I leave the conversation kind of scratching my head, like, this individual seems to be in the know on a lot, but where are they getting their information?
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I wonder, is like, where do I start in talking to them about these podcasts? I mean, there's lots of different options, but where do I start to tell them, here, listen to this, listen to that? There's like for instance, for me, I listen to like 4 or 5 different podcasts, but of course, while I work, I don't really watch the videos. I just listen. Unfortunately, a lot of other people don't have that luxury of being able to do that because they're working the full-time job. They can't do that while they work. They can't listen. They can't
Right.
watch while they work. Only time they really have is on their break. And I feel like, for me being in the know, I listen to podcasts like 4 or 5 days a week.
Right.
They maybe
You're a
have
machine.
they maybe have time to do it a few hours a week. They have families that got to take care of, their full-time job. They have other obligations. Me, I'm just a single guy.
Right.
So,
Well, that's the value to podcasts, I find, more than being free, open source. Like, you can find like, more truthful information because there's less. I guess it's less corrupted, right? On buying like these, essentially buying people out, right?
yeah.
Like these organizations that existed before. Oh, here it goes. Greatest challenges. I had a line of thought there and try to bring that back in, man. I'm really I dove in head first here, and I'm facing my greatest challenge in a way. Effectively getting my brain to function highly enough to even host / have these conversations. So I got my work cut out for me, my friend.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time I've done this too, so I'm on the receiving end as well.
You're awesome. I appreciate you.
But what I was thinking too is like concerning the podcast stuff.
Yeah.
Like a couple times, like people have asked me, my friends have asked me, so what's the news today? What have you heard? So I end up letting them know. It's like, oh, this is what's going on now. So sometimes it's from their friends that actually they get the information. For better or worse, I generally tell them to stay away from the mainstream media.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. The mainstream media has some truth to it, but it's not 100% truth. But it's also
Right.
difficult to tell what's 100% true in podcasts as well. So you have to use discernment.
100%.
And a lot of people can't or have a difficult time. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I have a difficult time.
Right.
Kind of like the what comes to mind is Dan Bongino. He mentions wait 72 hours for a news story.
Right.
So the Bongino rule.
Right.
So
it's a good one.
72 hours or 24 hours. I forgot the time limit. But wait a certain time, then you find out what truth is actually happening.
Well, enough information now is out to even discern what's true or what's not. So it's a very good rule to have versus just one side of the story, boom, hits newsstands and people just run with it as if that's the truth. But the truth of the matter is there's two sides to every story. There's, and sometimes the truth lies in the middle of both those stories. So it's definitely important in that regard.
Well, just like this story that just came out concerning Israel and Palestine, or the Hamas, concerning the hospital. New York Times posted on the front page that Israel bombed the hospital and 500 people died.
So much that's been debunked.
What's come out is actually just it hit a parking lot. It was
True.
kind of like a flash bomb, I guess. I don't know what it's actually considered, but nothing was really damaged.
Right.
Hospital-wise. There was damages. From my understanding, there was some death, but it wasn't to the point that the New York Times or other outlets were proclaiming. And I think a lot of outlets were actually saying, yeah, hospital got destroyed by Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, there's two sides to the story, but wait. Time.
You guys hearing that? So there's so many that in a sense is what I was even trying to touch on. Same thing with hey, if these sources cared about you, they touch on these other things. I mean, there's so many examples we could essentially use that highlights why are we utilizing these sources of information when they are biased. They are showing their bias. They're showing their true colors. They're showing like this propaganda, like something that's effectively, and that's where if you deep dive and you use your discernment and you start looking example after example after example to where effectively, wow, this is a war machine that's being utilized against the people to create confusion, division, because I mean it's no secret, divided we're weak and controllable and conquerable and manipulatable. All those things versus uniting, we are undefeatable, right? We're just because collectively we can ensure a better tomorrow. We can ensure uh, no tyrannical rule or what have you. So it's interesting, but in that very specific and current event really highlights the level of importance of sourcing information, waiting, going through before you essentially become convicted in anything. Because how can you really be convicted on anything if you haven't done your due diligence, if you haven't done your homework, right? Like it's like it pulls on your heartstrings and emotions in such a way where they just want you to run with this label and be convicted in it just as they tell you. That's where it's also tying into gaslighting versus truth. And I love that you brought up Dan Bongino because there's so many sources. Like I don't want to just necessarily tie people in and hoard people to this podcast. I want to plug these other patriots that essentially are out there
Yeah.
on the front lines that are
Trying to defend our freedoms, get back to our freedoms.
100%. And I mean, no fear, we could name drop even right now. I love JP Sears. He's amazing through comedy,
Funny.
right? Touching on things and just kind of fighting back against all this woke nonsense and almost delusional thinking, getting back into the realm of reality. What a beautiful concept. But yeah, Stu Peters, he's very passionate. So I get he's not necessarily probably a lot of people's first choice if they tuned into it enough, because it can have a feeling of, I don't know, it could get you amped up, almost anxiety ridden or what have you.
Yeah.
But I do admire the passion he has to really bullnose, like take things head on.
Well, even just satire websites, Babylon Bee comes to mind.
Oh, really?
Some hilarious articles, but it's almost to the point you can't tell if it's satire or real life now, just because the crazy things that are happening in the world today.
Right.
I can't comprehend it.
I know that's
It's
more
ridiculous.
your forte, but I do enjoy
'cause I like humor.
sometimes, but like there's just so much we're trying to figure out. Yeah, humor is amazing, but when it's to a point, it starts almost having an effect as to like now making it more confusing to discern what's true and not. That's where it's like, okay, I gotta step out of the satire realm, and even though there's few things that speak to me that are funny, but just try to
This is some way I look at some of the stuff. It's like, okay, is mainstream media saying this? All right, I'll believe the opposite.
right.
Not for everything.
That's how bad it's
but-
gotten.
Yeah. Or,
Yeah.
hate to say it, but this administration, if they're saying something, I generally believe the opposite.
Right.
I don't want to feel that way, but unfortunately I do for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty sad.
Well, it just is what it is, right? It's the world we live in, and that's why it's so important for us to, because it may seem inconvenient initially to look into the podcast realm, give these other, I can confidently say patriots, because a lot of these individuals like Charlie Kirk, Walsh, Tim Pool, even, so many of these individuals like have done their research. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to agree with them on every single thing, but they're hitting the nail on the head most of the time, and it just has created that value, I guess, with me. But sorry, it looked like you were gonna say something there. And okay,
Sometimes I'm just thinking. So
well, that's where okay, it might seem like an inconvenience because you're so used to turning on that telly and channel whatever news. But the podcast realm is an invaluable source because you can more so whistle while you work. Like not everyone has that, but it kind of leads back to that question, like where are people getting their information? And some of the answers I've gotten up to this point is just their friend circles, so they clearly have friends and family and people that are influential in their lives that are doing their due diligence because they can seem pretty informed and on current events, but it does blow my mind that they're still unfamiliar with the podcast realm or say non-mainstream media platforms, where less censorship, free speech is more supported because it's no secret that these other mainstream media platforms, I mean, shoot, they were banning and moderating and censoring platforms and individuals just for saying, "Hey, here's an article showing masks aren't good for your health." And it was scientifically backed, proven, it, and they can't even bring up that discussion. And that's a platform we're going to support. It's yes, you could stay on there, sure, what have you, but you got to grasp people like what that means and now source your information from other ones. The time clearly that you're going to spend on that platform undoubtedly now is going to have a level of impact because it's just one side. They've shown the bias. That's where free speech and non-censorship, it's so crucial. It's so crucial.
yeah.
Yeah.
While you were saying some of that stuff, it actually reminded me of actually a podcast from Tim Pool.
Okay.
Tim Pool, he was actually interviewing Robert Epstein. Not Epstein Island Epstein. This is Robert Epstein. Robert Epstein was actually involved with what he does. He actually collects data concerning how much of manipulation Google has done. Google and Facebook and these other social media platforms, but mostly both of them.
What? Google?
Yeah, it's amazing, huh?
So many people.
So by
don't
the
even
millions. So
Yeah.
So he was doing it for 2016. I'm sorry, 2016, 2020, and what's crazy is he said, yeah. So it was actually one of the most recent interviews with Tim Pool. Oh, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, he Robert Epstein is actually he voted for Hillary, he voted for Biden, but he doesn't like what's going on though. He wants, as he says, democracy. We know this is not a democracy. This is a constitutional republic, but
right.
either way,
Right.
he wants it done the right way, instead of falsely through manipulation through Google and other aspects that technology is doing right now. So, I mean, kind of plug-in. If you have that opportunity to watch that podcast, I would recommend it. Tim
I
Pool
love
and
it.
Robert Epstein, because he goes into
That's
detail.
a recent
Yeah,
one?
I think it was just a couple days ago.
Okay.
But he goes
I'll
into a
be sure
lot
to
of
check it
other
out.
things too.
I love it.
So,
See, it's so important. Like, we don't know what we don't know, people. Right? Like, in what's the purpose of even being here? We can't draw these fine lines in the sand. And why are any of these topics untouchable? Not just on these platforms, not just on the social media like platforms or even news, right? And the reality of it is, even the podcast realm, they're trying to stomp out more and more from reaching through all sorts of attacks. If you actually start looking into it, where say Stu Peters has been, oh, what do they call him? Swatted, I think is what they're calling it now, where someone effectively called in, made just BS phone call essentially to the police department or FBI or what have you, and just made all these false accusations as if they
Yeah, life
called.
threatening, and the cops come.
Yeah, and they come.
It's like SWAT team comes.
Yeah,
So,
because I think one of them specifically was talking as if he was Stu Peters, and that he just killed his family, like the most horrific thing. So, police obviously take that seriously,
yeah.
but they were trying to basically delete this man for just speaking his mind, and what he's finding to be true. And that's just the thing. This very platform, I don't want to instill my thoughts on anyone, right? That's where unmuzzled chat. Let's take the muzzles off. Let's communicate. And if we're not effectively doing just that, where hey, this could be a polarized topic, we could agree to disagree. We should be able to shake hands and go our separate ways. Like look at the other individual in the eyes and say, I appreciate your time. Thank you. I agree to disagree. Like what a concept. Like what's happened? Why are things? That's how effective the mainstream media has been indoctrinating, like being a wolf in sheep's clothing, polarizing topics so much, weaponizing words so much, to where as mature adults we've seemingly overnight like lost the ability to agree to disagree or have a conversation.
Yeah.
So often it's getting to a point of name calling and getting so emotionally charged, like the conversation, it's no longer conversation. It's a one way street.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't happen overnight. So this has been decades in the making.
True.
Decades, or who knows how long. I mean, unfortunately, it comes with the education system. Education system and families. Broken families, that kind of ruins a lot. And ultimately, personally, I think that's the main goal of everything that's happening.
Right.
Is to destroy the central family unit.
Right.
I mean, just think about it. For taxes, I mean, this is just one example. Just taxes. It's you get better. I don't know what I'm looking for. They pretty much encourage being single instead of having a family. So you get. I don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a road you don't know, because that's a lot of with a lot of these topics
in my mind, but
to articulate. Oh my goodness, to articulate, like, you undoubtedly probably listened to someone recently that was kind of connecting those dots.
Good possibility.
But then articulating it, and I find that
think it has
challenge.
To do with the deductions and stuff like that.
Right.
It's like even just renting an apartment or something. Given, once again, I'm single, haven't been married or anything. Like renting an apartment, it's easier to rent an apartment for yourself than it is for a newlywed couple. From my understanding, it's going to be a lot more expensive, and for a newlywed couple as opposed to just a single person. I don't know the reasons behind that, but so don't quote me on it. But
okay.
it's I don't know. It comes down to the family, and it comes down to the education that's happening in this country. And I'm sure it's not just this country. I'm sure it's global. It's just they're trying to destroy the family and religious aspects of that family.
Right.
To make those people dependent upon those in power.
Well, in a huge way, it's breaking up the infrastructure that made America so strong. Passionate, a threat to tyrannical rule across the globe. It's essentially like the Chinese 100-year war game plan, where they can infiltrate countries and take over in a tyrannical sense without firing a shot. It's through all this delusional thinking and false ideology. And you're right. It's gonna take some work individually to even help like articulate that. But what I would like to touch on is, once again in the podcast realm, do we necessarily we could try our best, because we may be able to obviously word some things that could resonate with some people to, oh wow, yeah, I didn't think of that, and it sparks a level of interest to where, not that they're drinking our Kool-Aid or anything, that it fires up within them to do their own research. That is what's important. But
Yeah, a lot of times when I talk to people concerning some of this stuff, I say, I tell them what I believe. It's like, hey, you could take it or leave it,
yes,
but this is just information that I have come to find.
yes,
But again, do your own research. Look into it for yourself. I just want people to think
Mhm.
on their own, because if they're not thinking on their own, then they're being controlled in one way or another.
100%.
Manipulation. And us humans, we're easy to manipulate.
Have you heard any of those mainstream media platforms, any news station, talk about any of this? Hey, this is, we think, just to touch on, we think masks are effective. You probably, you probably might should, but look into the information first, because that's important. On any single topic, I challenge, because I can't think of a single topic where they were like, yeah, this is what we pretty much find to be true. Bring the receipts, and no, and touch on. But hey, guys, like, do your own due diligence. Don't take our word for it.
Yeah.
None of them are doing that.
Yeah, a lot of the times I like to bring in some logic into it. I'm
Right.
not saying I'm perfect at it, of course
Right.
not. And I make mistakes all the time. But concerning the COVID stuff, I'm like, huh, this doesn't look right. Let's see. Because everything they were trying to do, most everything they did, from what I saw, they were trying to destroy morale.
Mm.
So you can't go to the football games. You can't go to the bar,
Mhm.
for those that drink. You can't go bowling. You really can't go out anywhere. You
Well,
can't
the
go
bars,
to,
I
you can't
think,
go
in
to
alcohol
church.
became essential,
You
but
can't-
church,
Right, you can't go to the gyms.
hmm
But you can't go to the movies. It was really anything to help increase people's morale,
right.
which is crazy.
Lock grandma in the basement.
Yeah,
Don't
pretty
go vitamin D.
Yeah, pretty much
Stay
don't go
inside.
outside.
Stay inside. I mean, yeah, there's so many things about that where, in fact, I would like to plug the Fall of the Cabal on right here on Rumble. The Fall of the Cabal is, I mean, once again, I love how they touch on, don't take our word for it. This is what we found to be, that Lady Janet is amazing. And the original 10 episodes, what would you call it? The original 10 episodes, there's a 10 episode part series.
I don't remember what it was called, but
It,
specifically.
it gets confusing because there was original 10 episodes, and then they started over with